I don't remember much about being 12, but I remember the smell of smoke. Not the comforting kind, the kind that clings to a flannel jacket after a campfire and makes you feel like you belong somewhere. The other kind. The kind that gets into your sinuses and stays there, faint, for years, surfacing every time someone strikes a match too close to your face. For 20 years, I woke up every morning believing I had ruined my family before I ever got the chance to finish middle school. I quit school at 16, worked every job that would take a kid who lied about his age, dishwashing, drywall, loading trucks before sunrise. Every dollar I made, I funneled toward a debt I thought I owed the world. I apologized to strangers who had never met me, who didn't know my name, who only knew that somewhere out past the county line, there used to be 300 acres of pine that weren't ash. I thought I deserved every bit of it. Last winter, my mother sat beside my hospital bed, held my hand the way she used to when I was small and scared of thunder, and told me 4 words that took my whole life apart at the seams. It wasn't your fault, but to understand what those words did to me, you have to go back, all the way back, to a Friday afternoon in October when my father packed the truck with a tent that smelled like the attic and told my mother we'd be back by Sunday. My dad was the kind of man other men wanted to be around. Daniel Carter built decks for half the neighborhood and never once overcharged anyone, not even the families everybody knew were behind on payments. He had this laugh that filled up a room, and when he looked at you, really looked at you, the way he looked at me, you felt like you were the only thing in the world worth paying attention to. I would have walked into traffic for that man. I think most boys feel that way about their fathers, at least for a little while, before the world teaches them otherwise. We pulled into the campground just past 4. There was a strip of woods bordering the site, technically protected land, though nobody out there seemed to take that designation too seriously. My dad had cleared brush off that same patch a dozen times before. He knew the land. He'd grown up 2 towns over, and used to say the forest practically raised him. We set up the tent. We ate sandwiches my mother had wrapped in foil that morning. And then, with maybe an hour of daylight left, my father started gathering the dead leaves and broken branches that had piled up near our site into a heap about waist high. "Gotta clear this out before it gets dark," he said. "Otherwise, we'll be tripping over kindling all weekend." I didn't think anything of it. Father's burned brush. That was just a fact of the world, the same as the sky being up and the ground being down. He pulled a box of matches from his jacket pocket, the kind with the red tip and the sandpaper strip along the side, and struck one against the box. The flame caught immediately, hungry, and he dropped it into the pile. I remember the sound more than the sight. A low crackle, almost gentle. The smell came right after sweet, woodsy, the smell every kid associates with marshmallows and ghost stories. "Can I do the next one?" I asked. "I want you to understand something. I wasn't being reckless. I wasn't some wild kid begging to play with fire because I didn't know better. I was a 12-year-old who wanted, more than almost anything, to do something his father was doing, to be trusted with something that felt grown up." My dad looked down at me, smiled that big easy smile, and handed me the box. "Go ahead," he said. "Just be smart about it." I struck the match. My hands were shaking a little, more from excitement than fear, and I dropped it onto a smaller pile a few feet from his. For maybe 90 seconds, nothing was wrong. The 2 fires burned where we'd built them, contained, manageable, exactly the kind of small controlled thing my father had done 100 times. Then the wind shifted. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't hear some ominous gust roaring through the trees like in a movie. It was just a breeze, the kind you'd barely notice on any other day, except this time it carried a handful of embers off the edge of my dad's pile and dropped them into the dry grass bordering the tree line. By the time my father noticed, the grass had already caught. He swore, grabbed the shovel from beside the tent, and started beating at the flames, but it had already jumped first to a cluster of dead brush, then up into the lower branches of a half-dead pine that hadn't seen rain in 3 weeks. I remember standing frozen, completely useless, while my father screamed at me to get the bucket, get water, get anything, and I just stood there, because some part of my brain had simply stopped working. We didn't put it out. Nobody could have. By the time the volunteer fire department arrived, the blaze had already crossed 2 ridgelines and was moving faster than anyone expected dry October woods to burn. It took 3 days to contain, The newspapers called it one of the worst local wildfires in a decade. 2 outbuildings were lost. A retired schoolteacher named Mr. Holloway barely got his dog out of a cabin before the flames reached his porch. 340 acres gone. When the investigators came to talk to us, my father knelt down in front of me in the gravel parking lot of the ranger station, gripped my shoulders hard enough to leave marks, and said the sentence that would shape the next 20 years of my life. Tell them you were playing with matches. Just you. I'll handle the rest. I'll protect you, I promise, but you have to say it was just you. I asked him why. I remember asking him why, in this small, confused voice, because even at 12 I understood enough to know this didn't make sense. Because juveniles get probation, he said. I'd lose the business, we'd lose the house. You'll get counseling, maybe some community service, and in a year nobody will remember your name. But if they think it was me, an adult, negligent Ethan, we lose everything. Do you understand? Everything. I didn't understand. Not really, but I trusted him more than I trusted my own confusion, and children always believe their fathers, especially the fathers who look at them like they're the only thing in the world worth paying attention to. So when the investigator crouched down to my level and asked, gently, who had struck the match that started the fire that crossed into the brush, I looked her in the eye and said, I did. It was me. I watched my father's shoulders drop with something that looked, at the time, like relief. I understand now it might have been shame. I didn't have the vocabulary back then to tell the difference. The juvenile court process moved faster than I expected. There was a hearing. A lawyer my parents could barely afford. A judge who looked at me with an expression somewhere between disappointment and pity, the kind of look reserved for kids who'd done something stupid but not unforgivable. I was placed under court supervision for 2 years, mandated to attend wildfire safety education, and our family was hit with restitution payments that I wouldn't fully understand the weight of until I was old enough to see the bank statements. My mother never said a single word in that courtroom. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor, and I remember thinking she was simply too devastated to speak. It would be almost 2 decades before I understood that her silence wasn't grief. It was complicity. The town didn't forget the way my father promised they would. Word got around fast in a place that's small, not the full truth, obviously, just the version everyone agreed to believe. The Carter kid burned down the Hollow Ridge woods. Some families pulled their kids away from me at school like I was contagious. A boy named Tyler, who used to ride bikes with me every weekend, told me, almost gently, that his mom didn't want him hanging around the firebug anymore. He didn't say it cruelly. That almost made it worse. I became quiet. The kind of quiet that gets mistaken for being well-behaved, when really it's just a kid learning that disappearing is safer than being seen. By 16, I'd convinced myself that the only decent thing I could do with my life was spend it paying the world back. I dropped out of school against my parents' half-hearted protests that, looking back, never felt nearly forceful enough for 2 people watching their son derail his entire future, and took the first job that would have me hauling drywall on a construction crew 2 towns over. Every paycheck, I gave a portion to my parents to help with what remained of the restitution. They never refused it. Not once. My father would take the folded bills from my hand, nod, and say something like, "You're a good kid, Ethan," in a tone that I now recognize as the sound of a man avoiding his own reflection. I told myself I was lucky to have parents who still loved me after what I'd done. I told myself a lot of things back then. 15 years later, I still flinched every time a wildfire made the local news. I still, without thinking, found myself apologizing to coworkers, to strangers in line at the gas station, to absolutely no one in particular whenever the subject came up. A reflex worn so deep into me that I didn't even register I was doing it until people started looking at me strangely. I had no idea, not yet, that the apology I'd been carrying for half my life had never belonged to me at all. There's a particular kind of tiredness that doesn't come from work. Work tiredness fades after a hot shower and a decent night's sleep. The other kind doesn't fade. It just sits in your chest like a stone you've gotten so used to carrying that you forget it's there, until one day someone asks why you're hunched over, and you realize you've been bracing against the weight for years without noticing. I spent my 20s bracing. By 23, I was working 2 jobs, warehouse shifts during the day, stocking shelves at a hardware store on weekends, and I told anyone who asked that I liked staying busy. That was true, in a way. Busy meant I didn't have to think too hard about why a guy with a decent work ethic and a clean enough record kept turning down every chance to do better. My supervisor at the warehouse, a heavy-set man named Gary who chewed the same piece of gum for what felt like hours, offered me a floor manager position when I was 25. Better hours, real benefits, a path forward that didn't involve lifting pallets until my back gave out. "I'm good where I am," I told him. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. "Ethan, this is more money for less physical work. What's the catch?" There wasn't a catch I could explain to him. There was just a quiet, persistent voice that had been with me since I was 12, telling me that comfort was something other people earned. People who hadn't burned 300 acres of protected forest and put a retired schoolteacher's dog in danger. People who hadn't cost their family everything. I didn't take the promotion. Dating went about the same way. I went out with a woman named Priya for almost a year when I was 27. Smart, funny, patient in a way I didn't deserve, and somehow never stopped to question why I felt that way. And the relationship ended not because of some dramatic betrayal, but because I kept pulling away every time things got close to serious. She asked me once, lying in the dark of my apartment, why I flinched whenever she brought up the future. "I don't know," I told her, which was a lie. I knew exactly why. I just didn't have the words for it yet. Or maybe I did and simply refused to use them, because saying them out loud would have made 20 years of quiet penance sound as absurd as it actually was. She left 6 months later. Not angry, just tired, the way you get tired of knocking on a door that never opens. College came up twice. Once through a community program that would have let me finish my GED and take night classes, and once when a friend from the warehouse floor practically begged me to apply for an apprenticeship that paid for trade school. Both times I found reasons to let the deadline pass. Both times some part of me reasoned that a man who'd done what I'd done didn't get to ask the world for more than survival. There was one thing I let myself do, quietly, almost ritualistically. Every October around the anniversary of the fire, I sent a donation to a forest restoration nonprofit 2 counties over. Never much, $50 some years, $200 when I could afford it, but I never missed a year. I never told anyone. It felt less like generosity and more like a tax I owed the universe, paid on time, every year without fail. My parents watched all of this happen without a single word of protest that ever felt real. There were moments, and I want to be fair here because fairness matters even now, where my mother would say something like, "Ethan, honey, you don't have to work so hard," in a voice that trembled just slightly at the edges. But it never went further than that. It never turned into an argument, never turned into her sitting me down and saying the thing that needed saying. My father, for his part, simply let it happen. He'd take my contributions toward the old restitution payments, even years after the debt was technically settled. Money I gave because I genuinely believed our family owed more than the court had assessed, and he'd say, "You're a good kid, Ethan. Better than I deserve." I used to think that sentence was a compliment. By the time I was 30, the stone in my chest had grown heavy enough that my body started keeping score in ways I couldn't ignore. Headaches that wouldn't quit. A persistent ringing in my left ear that the doctor blamed on stress. I kept working anyway, because stopping felt like admitting that 20 years of punishing myself hadn't actually fixed anything, and I wasn't ready to sit with that thought yet. The collapse happened on a Tuesday. I remember that detail specifically. A Tuesday, nothing special about it, gray sky, nothing dramatic in the air to warn me. I was midway through a double shift, hauling a stack of lumber toward the loading dock, when the world tilted sideways, and the next thing I knew I was staring up at fluorescent lights I didn't recognize. A paramedic's face hovering close to mine, asking me my name like it was a question I needed to think hard about. Exhaustion, the doctor said. Severe dehydration. A heart rate that had been running dangerously elevated for who knows how long, blood pressure numbers that made the attending physician's eyebrows climb toward his hairline. "Your body is telling you something," he said, not unkindly. "I'd suggest you start listening." My mother came to the hospital alone. My father, she told me when I asked, was dealing with a job site issue and would come by later. I remember finding that strange even through the haze of the IV drip, though I didn't have the energy to examine why. She sat in the chair beside my bed for a long time without saying much, just held my hand, the way she used to when I was small. I drifted in and out, half asleep from whatever they'd given me. And at some point I became aware that she was crying, quietly, the kind of crying you do when you've practiced not making noise. "Mom," I said, "I'm okay, it's just exhaustion." "You work yourself half to death every year," she said. And I let it happen. I let it happen for 20 years. I thought she meant it the way mothers always mean things like that, generalized guilt, the kind every parent carries about a kid who works too hard. I told her it wasn't her fault, that I chose this, that I'd always felt like I owed. "You don't owe anyone anything," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer right away. She looked at the door first, like she was checking whether my father might walk through it. And something about that small, instinctive glance told me, before she said another word, that whatever was coming had been locked away for a very long time. "It wasn't your fault," she said. "The fire, it was never your fault." I remember the exact texture of the silence that followed. Hospital silence, thin and sterile, broken only by the soft mechanical beep of whatever machine was monitoring my heart rate, which I'm fairly certain spiked the moment she said it. "What do you mean it wasn't my fault?" I said. Not really a question. More like I was testing whether the sentence would hold up if I said it back to her. "Your father lit that pile," she said. "Not you. You copied what he was already doing. That's all you did, Ethan, you copied your father. The way every 12-year-old boy copies his father, but the fire that crossed into the brush, the one that spread, that was his pile. Not yours." "That's not Mom." I struck the match. I remember striking the match. "You struck a match into a small pile 3 feet from his," she said. "The investigators thought so too at first. They were looking at him. An adult, supervising a minor, conducting an unauthorized burn on protected land, that's negligence, Ethan. That's the kind of negligence that ends careers and puts people in real legal trouble. Your father panicked. He talked to you before they could talk to you alone. He told you what to say." 20 years of carefully constructed identity does not collapse loudly. I want to correct whatever image you might have in your head of some explosive emotional breakdown, beeping monitors and dramatic shouting. It wasn't like that. It was quiet. It was the quietest thing that has ever happened to me. I just lay there in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, while every single decision I'd made since I was 12 years old rearranged itself into a shape I didn't recognize. The dropped scholarship, Gary's promotion, Priya lying beside me in the dark, asking why I flinched, the donations I'd mailed every October like clockwork, every dollar I'd handed my father with my head bowed like a man making restitution to a debt collector. None of it had ever been mine to pay. "Why?" I said, and my voice came out so flat I barely recognized it. "Did you let me believe it for 20 years? My mother's face did something I'd never seen it do before. It just folded completely, like the weight of the question had finally found the one structural point she couldn't reinforce anymore. "Because your father said if the truth came out, we'd lose everything. The business, the house. He said you were young, that kids recover faster, that it would blow over. And you agreed with that." I was scared, Ethan. For 20 years. She didn't answer that. I don't think there was an answer that wouldn't have sounded exactly as hollow as the silence that followed it. I was discharged 2 days later against the doctor's mild objections, and I drove straight to my parents' house instead of my apartment, still weak, still vaguely dizzy if I stood up too fast. But some things apparently override exhaustion. My father was in the garage when I got there, sanding down a deck railing for some client's backyard, sawdust drifting in the slanted afternoon light like something almost peaceful. He looked up when I came in and must have seen something in my face, because his hands stopped moving before I'd said a single word. "Mom told me," I said. He set the sander down very carefully on the workbench, like it might go off if he wasn't gentle with it. "Told you what?" "Don't," I said. "Don't make me say it out loud, while you stand there pretending you don't know exactly what." For a long moment he just looked at me, and something in his expression shifted, not surprise, I realized. Relief. 20 years of relief finally allowed to surface. "I was going to lose the business," he said. "Do you understand what that would have meant? We'd have lost the house. Your mother would have had to go back to a job she hated just to keep food on the table. You were 12, Ethan. 12-year-olds get probation and community service. I was looking at fines I couldn't pay, and a negligence case that would have followed me for the rest of my career. So you decided a 12-year-old should carry that instead. I decided our family would survive." "You decided I would carry it," I said, and my voice finally broke, the calm cracking right down the center. "For 20 years, Dad. 20 years I thought I was the reason this family struggled. I quit school for you. I turned down a promotion because some part of me thought I didn't deserve it. I let a woman I loved walk out of my life because I couldn't explain to her why I felt like I owed the universe a debt I could never pay off. And the whole time, it was you. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself, I said. And you let me protect you too, for 20 years. He didn't argue that. I think, somewhere underneath the decades of avoidance, he'd run out of room to keep pretending otherwise. I'm sorry, he said, and it sounded almost rehearsed, the way apologies sound when a man's been quietly composing them in his head for longer than he'd ever admit. I should have told them the truth that day. Yeah, I said, you should have. I didn't yell after that. I didn't throw anything, didn't slam doors, didn't give him the kind of explosive confrontation that might have at least felt like release. I just stood there in that garage full of sawdust and old tools, looking at a man I'd spent my entire life trying to be worthy of, and felt something close to nothing at all. I need some time, I told him, which wasn't entirely true. What I needed was distance, real, structural distance, the kind that doesn't come with a return date. I didn't call either of them for the next 4 months. My mother left voicemails sometimes, soft and apologetic, which I let go to a folder I never opened. My father didn't call at all, which somehow felt consistent with everything I now understood about him. I moved through those months in a strange, untethered way, like a man recalibrating a compass that had been pointing the wrong direction his entire life. I started therapy, awkwardly, with a counselor who specialized in exactly the kind of inherited guilt I didn't yet have a name for. I slept better some nights and not at all on others. I thought more than once about Priya and what I might say to her now if I ever got the chance, though I never worked up the nerve to find out if that chance still existed. Then, on a Thursday in early March, my phone rang with my mother's number, and something in the rhythm of the ring, too early, too insistent, told me before I even answered that whatever she was calling about wasn't going to be small. Ethan, she said, and her voice had a wet, ragged quality I recognized from the hospital. It's your father. The doctors found something. They're saying it's serious. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic, and something underneath it that I couldn't name. Something that made my chest tighten the moment I walked through the door. My father looked smaller than I remembered him. Decades of building decks and hauling lumber had given him a kind of permanence in my mind, like he was made of the same sturdy material as the houses he worked on. The man in that bed looked like he'd been quietly dismantled, board by board, while no one was paying attention. You came, he said. His voice had thinned along with everything else. Mom asked me to. He nodded, like that was a fair enough reason, and didn't push for a better one. I sat down in the chair beside the bed, the same kind of chair my mother had sat in months earlier when she finally told me the truth, and for a long time neither of us said anything. The silence wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't entirely hostile either. It was the silence of two people who'd run out of easy things to say to each other a long time ago. The doctors are saying months, he said eventually, not years. I didn't know what to do with that information, so I just let it sit in the room with us. I've had a lot of time to think lying here, he continued. About what I did, about what it cost you. He turned his head toward me, slow, like the motion took effort. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me, Ethan. I don't think I've earned the right to ask for that. Good, I said, because I'm not sure I can. He nodded again, like he'd expected exactly that answer and had already made peace with it somewhere in the long hours of staring at hospital ceiling tiles. I just needed you to know I understand what I took from you. Not the money, not even the school or the years. I think about the boy you were before that day, and the man you became after it, and I know, Ethan, that those should have been the same person. You should have got to grow up into yourself. Instead, you grew up into a debt. It was, I think, the most honest sentence my father had ever said to me. I didn't tell him it was okay, because it wasn't, and I'd promised myself in the months since the garage that I wouldn't hand out absolution just to make a hard moment easier to sit through. But I didn't walk out either. I stayed in that chair for almost 2 hours, mostly in silence, occasionally talking about small, safe things. A deck he'd built years ago for a family on Maple Street. A fishing trip we'd taken when I was 9, before any of this. Neither of us mentioned the fire again that day. I left the hospital feeling strange, neither lighter nor heavier, just rearranged. It was about 3 weeks later that the story broke on the local news. A wildfire 2 counties over. eerily similar in shape to the one that had swallowed my childhood. A father and his 16-year-old son had been burning brush on the edge of their property when a sudden gust carried embers into a stand of dry pine. The fire spread fast, consumed almost 200 acres before crews contained it. And for about 4 days, the headlines could have been lifted directly from 20 years earlier. Except this time, the story went differently. The father, a man named Robert Aldridge, walked into the sheriff's office the following morning and told them everything. That he'd been the one to start the burn pile. That his son had only been standing nearby. That any negligence charge belonged to him, not the boy. I watched the follow-up coverage obsessively. The way you can't look away from something that feels like it's speaking directly to a wound you didn't know was still open. Aldridge lost his contracting license within the month. He was looking at a negligence conviction that carried real prison time. His name dragged through every local paper. His business, the thing he'd spent 15 years building, gone within a single news cycle. His wife took on a second job at a grocery store to keep the household running. Their eldest daughter, 19 and halfway through a nursing program, dropped out to help cover the gap. It was, in almost every visible way, the exact disaster my father had once told me we were trying to avoid. And yet, I kept coming back to one detail buried in a local news interview, where a reporter asked the 16-year-old how he felt watching his father take responsibility. The boy, visibly uncomfortable in front of the camera, said something simple. "I don't know, bad, I guess, but also, I don't know." He told the truth. That matters, right? That sentence sat with me for days. I thought about my father standing in that gravel parking lot 20 years ago, gripping my shoulders, choosing the version of the story that let him keep his business and his house and his place in the community, at the cost of handing his 12-year-old son a debt that wasn't his to pay. And I thought about Robert Aldridge, a man I'd never met, walking into a sheriff's office and choosing the version of the story that cost him everything he'd built, because the alternative was watching his son carry it instead. I'm not going to tell you Daniel Carter was a monster. I've turned that thought over enough times to know it isn't true, or at least it isn't the whole truth. He was a frightened man standing at a crossroads that most people, thankfully, never have to face. Protect yourself and keep providing for the family you love, or tell the truth and watch everything you've built collapse. He chose the cowardly path, but it was cowardice born out of fear, not cruelty. And there's a difference, even if that difference doesn't erase what it cost me. Robert Aldridge stood at the same crossroads and chose differently. I don't know if that makes him a better man than my father, in some larger accounting of human worth. I only know that his son got to keep his childhood, and I didn't. And that single divergence in one terrified moment was the entire distance between those two boys' lives. I went back to the hospital one more time, near the end. My father was sleeping when I arrived, smaller still, tubes and monitors doing the work his body had started refusing to do on its own. I sat with him for a while before he woke, and when he did, his eyes found mine with a kind of tired clarity. "I can't give you back my childhood," I told him. The words came out steadier than I expected, like I'd been quietly rehearsing them for months without realizing it. "I can't give you back the 20 years, or the woman I let walk away, or the version of myself I might have been if I'd never carried something that was never mine. I don't think I'll ever fully forgive you for that. I think some part of me is always going to carry the shape of it." He didn't look away. I'll give him that much, he didn't look away. "But I won't let your lie poison the rest of my life," I said. "I'm done paying a debt that was always yours. Not for revenge, not even really for you, for me." He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, not because I'd forgiven him, but because some moments don't require forgiveness to mean something. "Thank you," he said, "for telling me the truth even now." "You're the one who finally told the truth," I said. "I just lived with the lie." He died 11 days later, on a Tuesday morning, with my mother holding one hand and a nurse quietly adjusting machines on the other side of the room. I wasn't there when it happened. I'd left an hour earlier to get coffee, and I've made my peace with that small absence in the way you make peace with things you can't undo and didn't choose. I enrolled in a continuing education program that spring, slow, deliberate, the kind of thing you do at 32 when you're finally allowing yourself to build a future, instead of simply surviving a past. I started volunteering with a wildfire prevention nonprofit not long after. The same kind of organization I'd been quietly donating to every October for 15 years. Except now, I showed up in person, taught controlled burn safety classes to teenagers who reminded me, more than I expected, of a boy I used to be. I don't do it out of guilt anymore. That part, at least, I managed to set down somewhere along the way, even if I never quite managed to set down everything else. Some debts get inherited, whether we agree to them or not. The only choice we ever really get is deciding how long we're willing to keep paying. I paid for 20 years on a debt that was never mine. I'm done